Stop reacting. Stoicism teaches true self-control. Stop reacting, not because emotions are wrong, but because most reactions are unexamined. They arise automatically, shaped by habit, fear, and social conditioning. In the modern world, reaction is rewarded, speed is praised, outrage is amplified, calm is mistaken for weakness. Yet beneath the noise, many live with a constant sense of strain, as if their inner life were being pulled in a dozen directions at once.
Stoicism begins from a simple observation. Life does not harm us by events alone, but by the judgments we attach to them. This is not an abstract idea. It plays out every day. A message goes unanswered, and the mind invents rejection. A plan fails, and the ego calls it humiliation. An insult appears, and anger rushes in, as if summoned by duty. The body reacts before reason is consulted, and afterward we justify what we already did. The Stoic does not deny emotion. He studies it. He notices how quickly the mind hands over authority to impulse. He learns that self-control is not about tightening the fist, but about loosening the false beliefs that drive unnecessary suffering. Calm is not passive. It is disciplined. It is the result of training the mind to see clearly. This teaching is not meant for a monastery or a vanished age. It speaks directly to the conditions of modern life. Constant comparison, uncertainty about the future, pressure to perform, fear of loss, and anger at injustice. Stoicism does not promise comfort. It offers steadiness. It does not remove difficulty. It teaches how to meet difficulty without losing oneself. To stop reacting is to begin governing your inner world. That is where freedom starts. Most people believe they lack control because life feels overwhelming. In reality, what they lack is discrimination. The Stoics were precise about this. They drew a firm line between what depends on us and what does not. This was not a comforting idea. It was a demanding one. It stripped away excuses and fantasies at the same time. What depends on you is limited, but it is decisive. Your judgments, your intentions, your choices. What does not depend on you is vast. Other people's opinions, the behavior of institutions, the economy, the past, the future, the body's eventual decline, and the final outcome of your efforts. Most distress comes from trying to control what was never yours, while neglecting what always was. Every moment begins with an impression. Something happens. A sound, a message, a look, a memory. The impression arrives uninvited. The Stoics never claimed otherwise. What follows is the crucial point. The mind immediately adds a judgment. This is bad. This is unfair. This threatens me. This means something about my worth. That judgment feels automatic, but it is not inevitable. It is a habit. To stop reacting is to interrupt this sequence, not by force, but by attention. The Stoic pauses, sometimes only for a breath, and asks whether the impression deserves assent. This pause is where freedom lives. Without it, life becomes a chain of reflexes. With it, the mind regains its role as governor rather than servant. Consider anger. Anger feels powerful, even righteous. It convinces you that something intolerable has occurred, but anger is not caused by the event itself. It is caused by the belief that you have been wronged and that reacting will restore balance. The Stoics saw this clearly. They observed that anger harms the one who carries it more than the one who provoked it. It narrows judgment, hardens the face, disturbs sleep, and makes future regret almost certain. The discipline is not to suppress anger blindly, but to examine the belief beneath it. Did someone violate your expectations? Expectations are not laws of nature. Did someone act unjustly? Perhaps, but your role is not to mirror their lack of reason with your own. Justice, for the Stoic, is a virtue exercised calmly,
not a surge of emotion. Anxiety follows a similar pattern. The mind projects itself forward, rehearsing losses that have not yet occurred. It treats imagined futures as present facts. The Stoics did not mock this tendency. They understood it deeply. They also refused to indulge it. The future does not exist yet. What exists is your present capacity to act with reason. When the mind abandons the present, it abandons its only point of leverage. This does not mean ignoring planning or responsibility. It means planning without attachment, acting without clinging to outcomes. You prepare carefully, then release the result. This is difficult because the ego wants guarantees. It wants certainty, recognition, safety. Stoicism denies these comforts. It offers something sturdier, self-command. Social pressure intensifies reactivity. Modern life exposes you constantly to other people's opinions. Approval and disapproval arrive instantly, often from strangers. The Stoics would not be surprised by this. They warned against becoming a spectator of oneself, living as if on trial before an invisible crowd. When your sense of worth depends on applause, your peace is always at risk. The Stoic response is not withdrawal, but reorientation. You answer to reason, not to the crowd. You measure yourself by the quality of your character, not by how you are perceived. This does not make you indifferent to others. It makes you less manipulable. Praise no longer intoxicates. Criticism no longer devastates. Both are treated as externals, neither sought nor feared. This discipline must be practiced in small moments. When interrupted, when misunderstood, when plans change, when technology intrudes. Each instance is an opportunity to train the mind, not perfectly, not dramatically, quietly. Repetition matters more than intensity. Self-control is not a single decision. It is a posture toward life, a refusal to be dragged by every impulse, a willingness to tolerate discomfort without immediately escaping it. The Stoics believed that endurance strengthens judgment. When you learn that you can remain steady under pressure, fear loses much of its authority. This is why Stoicism insists on responsibility without blame. You are responsible for your inner life. That responsibility is demanding, but it is also liberating. No one else can take it from you. No circumstance can fully override it. Even in loss, even in illness, even in constraint, the capacity to choose your response remains. To stop reacting is not to become cold or detached. It is to become deliberate. It is to reclaim the interval between stimulus and action and fill it with reason. This is the first work of Stoic discipline, and without it, no further progress is possible. Once the mind learns to pause, it becomes possible to see more clearly what has been driving its unrest. Much of that unrest comes from desire, not basic needs, but the constant wanting of things that promise security, status, or relief from discomfort. The Stoics were unsentimental about this. They observed that desire, when left unexamined, turns the mind outward and makes it dependent on circumstances it cannot command. Modern life sharpens this dependence. You are encouraged to measure yourself through comparison, to chase signals of success that are unstable by design. Attention, approval, wealth, and recognition rise and fall according to forces far beyond individual control. When the mind ties its peace to these things, it becomes restless and easily disturbed. Each gain produces fear of loss. Each setback feels like a personal verdict. The Stoic response is not rejection of the world, but a reordering of value. External things are not evil, but they are unreliable. They are placed in the category of indifference. This does not mean they are ignored. It means they are not treated as conditions for a good life. Character, by contrast, is always within reach. Integrity, restraint, fairness, courage, and clear judgment do not depend on luck or recognition. They depend on choice. Ego resists this reordering. Ego wants to be affirmed. It wants to be seen as important, competent, admired. When ego governs, every interaction becomes a test. Conversations turn into competitions. Disagreement feels like threat. Failure becomes shame. The Stoics saw ego not as an enemy to be crushed, but as a mistaken ruler to be corrected. They reminded themselves that each person plays a role assigned by circumstances. Some roles are honored, some obscure. None are permanent. To confuse the role with the self is to live in constant fear of being replaced or diminished. The Stoic trains himself to perform his role well, then release it without resentment when it changes. This attitude creates a quiet dignity that does not depend on applause. Attachment is another source of suffering. We cling not only to people and possessions, but to narratives about how life should unfold. When reality diverges from these narratives, frustration and bitterness follow. The Stoics practiced voluntary simplicity, not because hardship is virtuous in itself, but because dependence weakens the mind. When you rehearse living with less, loss loses its power to terrify. This applies directly to relationships. To care deeply without trying to possess, to appreciate without assuming permanence. The Stoic loves without illusion. He knows that people change, depart, and die. This knowledge does not reduce love. It purifies it. It replaces grasping with gratitude. It encourages presence instead of entitlement. In work and ambition, the same principle holds. Effort is honorable. Outcome is uncertain. When you confuse the two, anxiety follows. You begin to see every obstacle as injustice and every competitor as a threat. The Stoic works with care and discipline, then accepts the result as belonging to the larger order of things. This does not weaken resolve. It steadies it. Digital life magnifies attachment. Metrics, comments, and constant updates feed the illusion that worth can be quantified. The Stoic approach is not moral panic, but distance. To use tools without allowing them to define you. To step back from the endless stream of opinion and remember that most of it has no bearing on your character or duties. Impermanence underlies all of this. Everything you chase is temporary. Everything you fear losing is already on loan. The Stoics return to this fact, not to depress themselves, but to sharpen their judgment. When you remember that nothing external is guaranteed, you stop demanding guarantees from life. You focus instead on using each moment well. This shift produces freedom, not freedom from obligation, but freedom from inner servitude. Desire no longer whips the mind into agitation. Ego no longer dictates reactions. Attachment loosens its grip. In their place grows a steadier form of contentment, grounded not in what happens, but in how you meet what happens. This is the second labor of Stoic discipline: to want rightly, to value correctly, and to live without tying your peace to what cannot be held. Even with discipline over reaction and desire, life will still present events that test the limits of acceptance. Loss arrives without asking. Injustice appears where it should not. Illness interrupts plans. Effort goes unrewarded. The Stoics did not soften these facts. They faced them directly, because clarity is a form of strength. They spoke often of fate, not as superstition, but as an acknowledgement of order beyond personal control. Every life unfolds within conditions not chosen: time, place, body, family, and chance encounters. To fight these facts is to exhaust oneself in a battle that cannot be won, to accept them blindly, however, is not Stoicism. The Stoic accepts circumstances while refusing to surrender moral responsibility. This distinction matters. You are not responsible for what happens to you, but you are responsible for how you respond to it. This responsibility cannot be outsourced to anger, despair, or blame. When something unjust occurs, the Stoic does not deny its injustice. He refuses to let it corrupt his character. He acts where action is possible, speaks where speech is required, and endures where endurance is the only option left. Endurance is not passive resignation. It is active steadiness. It is the decision to remain aligned with reason, even when emotion urges collapse or retaliation. The Stoics believed that suffering becomes intolerable only when it is paired with the belief that it should not be happening. When that belief is questioned, pain may remain, but panic diminishes. This is especially true in the face of loss. The death of a loved one, the end of a relationship, collapse of a long-held identity. The Stoic prepares for these realities, not by emotional withdrawal, but by clear-eyed awareness. Everything that comes into your life is temporary. To pretend otherwise is comforting only until reality intrudes. By remembering this daily, the Stoic avoids surprise. Grief still comes, but it is not mixed with outrage at the nature of existence. Tears are not forbidden. Despair is not indulged. The loss is met with acknowledgement. This was always part of the contract of being alive. Mortality stands behind all Stoic practice, not as a threat, but as a guide. Knowing that time is limited clarifies what deserves attention. Many anxieties shrink when viewed against the certainty of death. Many conflicts lose their urgency. Many ambitions reveal themselves as distractions. The Stoic does not obsess over death. He uses it to measure proportion. Is this worth your peace? 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 Is this worth your integrity? Is this how you want to spend the attention that remains to you? These questions are not meant to produce fear, but focus. Injustice presents a different challenge. The world is not arranged according to fairness. Good people suffer, corrupt people prosper. The Stoics refused to let this fact turn them bitter. They understood that virtue is not rewarded by outcomes, but justified by itself. To act justly in an unjust world is not naive. It is an assertion of inner freedom. Bitterness is a form of slavery. It binds the mind to what it resents. The Stoic chooses not to carry this burden. He recognizes that wrongdoing by others is their failure of reason, not a command for him to abandon his own. This does not excuse harm. It prevents contamination. Uncertainty about the future unsettles many. The Stoic response is grounded and unspectacular. You prepare for what is reasonable. You accept that much will remain unknown. You resist the temptation to live mentally in imagined disasters. The present moment is demanding enough without borrowing trouble from futures that may never arrive. Fate, in Stoic thought, is not an enemy to be conquered. It is a framework within which character is exercised. You do not choose the cards, you choose how to play them. This choice is available in prosperity and in hardship, in health and in decline. This is the final discipline, to align your will with reality, without surrendering your values, to meet whatever arrives with steadiness, to accept limits without self-pity, to live in agreement with nature, not by retreating from life, but by engaging it without illusion. In doing so, you discover a resilience that does not depend on circumstances, a calm that is not shaken by volatility, a sense of meaning rooted not in control over events, but in mastery of oneself. To stop reacting is not a one-time achievement. It is a daily practice of returning to what is yours and releasing what is not. You will fail at this often. The Stoics expected this. Progress for them was not measured by perfection, but by quicker recovery and clearer awareness. Each time you notice yourself being carried away by impulse and choose to return to reason, the habit of self-command strengthens. The modern world will not become quieter. Distraction will not lessen. Injustice will not disappear. This is precisely why Stoic discipline matters now. It does not depend on ideal conditions. It is designed for disorder. It asks only that you govern your inner life with seriousness and honesty. Calm is not indifference. It is readiness. When the mind is not consumed by reaction, it sees more accurately and acts more effectively. You become harder to provoke, but more capable of decisive action when action is required. You stop wasting energy on outrage and invest it in what actually improves your character and your conduct. Practicing Stoicism does not promise relief from pain. It offers relief from confusion. It teaches you to stand upright within uncertainty, to accept impermanence without despair, and to face mortality without panic. In doing so, it restores a sense of proportion that modern life often erodes. This practice is quiet. It does not announce itself. It grows through reflection, repetition, and attention to small moments. Over time, you notice a shift. Reactions slow, judgments soften. You are less at war with circumstances and more aligned with your own values. If this way of thinking speaks to you, continue walking it. Return to it when you forget. Study it when you doubt. This channel exists as a steady companion in that work, not to motivate or entertain, but to support the cultivation of reason, discipline, and inner freedom. Follow if you wish to continue this practice and carry it with you into the ordinary demands of your life.